Man, it is another great day for black belts and boardrooms. It's a good Friday. I'm happy. It's been a long week. I think everybody just told us off the air that it's a long week for everybody. But I'm excited about who we have on the podcast today. Mir, who do we have on today?
Well, Renard, I am also excited about today's guest. Not only is she a friend of ours, but she's somebody who has traveled many, many paths, I think is a good way for me to put it. So you touched on real estate. I think that's only one aspect, but she was a leader in corporate. She's also helping other leaders grow as a coach, an executive coach to be more exact. And she is the amazing Divya Smith. Divya, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I feel like you both are kind of like such, in your own spaces, just such regarded leaders. I'm excited to kind of have this conversation with both of you today.
Well, we are excited to have you here, Divya. So let's get started. Let me ask you this. You have had quite the journey and you've had a long career in corporate. I think it's fair to say long in your case as well. How did you decide that, you know what? I want to go from corporate to entrepreneurship? Because I'm sure that's a question a lot of our listeners are usually thinking about.
Yes, of course. So to kind of share, I've been in corporate America almost 22 years. My first job was an intern at Target, and I was a
Mm.
freshman at college. So I was 18 years old when I had my first internship at Target Corporation. Thankfully, because of my background, I had done a lot of technology, coding, programming in high school. So when I was in first year of college, they hired me. Good for them. But so that's kind of where I started, and I think in corporate, you realize you get to a point where you're making an impact, but you really want to make a bigger impact. So for me, it was kind of twofold. My last role, I was a senior director of technology at UnitedHealth Group. Had a large team rolling out telehealth products for our providers at that time. And I just wanted to make even a bigger impact. And I think for me, that meant a little bit more on a personal level because myself included and all the people who ever reported to me, we are working 50, 60, 70 hours, not understanding how do we invest our money? How do we move forward? And if we ever wanted to even just pull back a little bit on our hours, how would we do that? Right. I think a lot of us who are in technology, we truly love technology, but sometimes we wish, could we just work 20 or 30 hours, take back our time and have other options? So for me, that became my purpose. And that's where I kind of moved into real estate to say, if I could learn how to invest, could I share it with other people how to invest their money so that whenever they felt like this is that time of life, I want to pull back a little bit, they would have that option. So that's kind of how I jumped into entrepreneurship.
That is such an important point you're making right now, Divya, because I think it's fair to say that, and I'll throw myself in there. I'll just use myself as an example and not generalize. Learning about finance or learning about investing was not something that I was taught in school. It kind of came after the fact. And, as an employee, you realize that, man, there's so much money I'm paying in taxes, and then all of a sudden entrepreneurship becomes such a, wonderful, shiny looking thing that you want to all strive towards. Now, on that point though, why did you pick real estate as an investment vehicle of all the different investment vehicles you could have chosen?
So, real estate, to your point, has some benefits specific related to taxes that usually like stocks doesn't provide you. Yes, you can kind of maybe take like $3,000 off per year. Again, you can ask your CPA about that. But real estate kind of gives a little bit bigger tax reducing strategies like depreciation. And then there are different ways, you can kind of correlate your expenses. So that's kind of why I wanted to diversify. Now, most of our 401ks, if I look back, you get stock options, especially once you kind of get to a certain level in corporate and you get your 401k, which is also in stock. So like once you kind of look through everything basically is in stock. And then, you get a financial advisor, they also put things back in stocks. Now, the interesting thing with stocks is it's not that one stock does better than the other in bad times. If they all go up and they kind of all go down, like, yes, they may not go at the same varied, like depth, but end of the day, they all go down. And I found that real estate doesn't do that specific to stocks. So I just wanted something diversified. So truly to protect myself and, my family as well, especially in the case if we ever wanted to kind of pull back from hours and, take some time to enjoy life because And I'll share this on a personal level. I have kids who are age 11 and 13, and before we know it, 2, 3, 4 years, they're going to be on their own, kind of doing things. And I just really wanted to see if I could spend more time with them without giving up kind of the financial stability part of it.
Yeah. I mean, we all do this for our kids, especially for the ones who have kids,
Yes,
so
absolutely.
we can all relate to that. But coming back to your corporate career, you've led teams. How did that help you decide that you also want to coach these same people? Because I know a little bit about your coaching style, so that's why I, make that connection. How did you get inspired to do that?
So, Amir, it's a great question. It is not something I ever thought I'd be doing. If even 5 years ago you had asked me, "Hey, do you see yourself a coach?" I was like, "No." Like my grandpa was a principal of a high school. My mom was, college. All these college professors. Me, no, I work in corporate America. Like that is not what I do. I think at some point in time you realize there's just a lot of people who need candid advice and then just coaching through kind of what they're going through. Personally, I had gone through some of these coaches as well, especially the executive coaches sometimes available. My frustration at times were some of these coaches had never really experienced the kind of stress we go through as corporate executives. And they had amazing frameworks and examples, but they weren't realistic examples, something that they could truly speak from. It was something that they had learned. And I think it's just a difference of sharing when you learn things versus when you experience it, it's two different things. So for me, I wanted to kind of share back, what really worked for me. And that's where kind of coaching was born. Also, the fact that I had quite a few people come ask me for help. And 50% of my calls, in the last couple of years ended up people asking me for help. How do I find a new role? How do I get promoted into a new career? I'm going through this difficult situation with my leader. How do I kind of go about it? So it was something that like softly it got me into it, but I also realized I loved it. Like I'm enjoying kind of helping people. I have couple of people that I'm coaching one on one, and Renard and I were talking right before this. Like, there's only so many people I can take on at a time because you're doing so many things. But once I started talking to him, he's like, man, like I'm ready." Like he signed up for a whole year. It's like I'm gonna like pay for all the sessions up front because I want to reserve your time right now before it's gone with other people. So for me, that was also fulfilling to see like I could help somebody and make an impact.
Amazing. I'm going to throw some shine on my good friend Renard over here. He too is an executive coach.
Yes, I heard. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I understand what you're going, and it makes me wanna ask a lot more questions around executive coaching for you. What's some of those changes that you see somebody who starts off with you, like, day 1 and may get into, the 3-month or 4 month mark? Are you seeing a lot of changes, and what kinda changes are those for each person?
Yes, I think the biggest difference I see is kind of helping with that decision fatigue. I think we all know decision fatigue as executives. There are certain things that you just want to have a clear understanding framework as far as here are my values. If you're outside this, like I don't even want to, think about it anymore. And I think that just continues to become critical, especially as we grow in our careers. Um, it's not something that you learn overnight either. So it's more just helping them kind of think through what are the values, be very clear about articulating and asking some of those things, especially to leaders that you work with, and also share that with your teams. So I think the biggest difference I see is from start, they're getting this advice that is actually actionable. It's not theoretical. We're talking about exactly what to say, how to say it, what actions to take, and then kind of tweaking it based on their personality. So it's an exact script because end of the day, we all are looking for somebody who can help us think differently and put things in perspective of the listener who they're talking to. So that's the biggest difference I see.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. One of the major things I see a lot, especially it comes to that unknown of the career.
Hmm.
They're looking for the next step, but they're not sure how to get there. Or you're coming with someone who may be deciding they don't want to do their certain profession anymore. Have you seen a lot of that with people that you're working with?
I am. And that is a great question, Renard, especially right now with so many people kind of losing their jobs. And I know we just talked about layoffs, but then also kind of that pivoting moment. I feel like I know we call it midlife crisis. I personally call it midlife awakening, which is like you're truly awakened to your own subconscious a little bit more and like listening to your own thoughts instead of listening to just, your leader's thoughts. And it kind of helps you realize, well, this is the part I really like and enjoy, and this doesn't. And I think sometimes you have to pull it out of people to really help them see what they're good at, and it may not be the same thing as what they enjoy. So like just really kind of differentiating between what you're good at may not be same as what you enjoy and what makes you money, right? Like those all three things could be different, and that is okay. I think we have this pressure to say, oh, find your passions at the age of 18. And this is one of the most frustrating things. And actually, I've written a post about it on LinkedIn. Is like, it's the hardest pressure we put on our, I mean, they're kids, they're 18. At 18, I would have never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now. You have not experienced life, you have not gone through college, you are just like starting out. So, we should be saying get as many experiences as you want, like do different things. Of course, figure out a way to make some money, but in parallel, like try many different things so that you can find what you like. We don't know what we like. And even now, like as we approach kind of our midlife years, that changes. My priorities at 20 have changed to my priorities in 40. So, and that goes with anybody in corporate America, like to your point. Everybody changes, and we really have to pay attention to what does this phase of life, like what am I looking forward to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I sit here and while you were saying that, I'm sitting there thinking of my 20 or 18-year-old self, probably would not even believe what I do now. And it wasn't my first thought to even go into tech when I first started. I've said this many times. I thought I was going to be a sports medicine. I thought I was going to be a physical therapist for some sports team, and that did not work out the way I planned. So you're 100% right. Your things change even when you get to, like you say, your 40s. I'm still changing every single day, and I think we all are, and that's just part of the bigger journey that we're trying to do. One of the great things I love what you always hone into is family and how important family is. I saw you just had a post about your family. I would love from your take of why family is so important for everything that you do.
I think we all need an anchor. Whether we're going out in the world trying new things and we come back to the safety of our family and people who accept you just the way you are, you can be sad around them, you can be happy around them, you can do things around them. I think we all need that space as humans, and we need to continue to build that community. And I feel in the race of continuing to aspire for bigger roles, more money, more promotions, we've kind of forgotten like things that actually bring us joy and truly fulfill us sometimes are not just the career. It's things outside it. So I think for me, it's just remembering that. And yes, my post today, it truly was remembering that. I took a month off. That's the first time I took my kids to India. Of course, I moved here from India like 23 years, 24, oh my gosh, 25 years ago. And it's been a while, but like having to go back and just spending that time with them, really showing what, culturally it's different. I think that was so meaningful because now it's helping them grow and kind of seeing their growth. That was critical too.
That puts a smile on my face. I'm gonna admit. I don't know what do you think, Amir?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that was a wonderful picture, and so I'll say this because I think I can relate to your kids as well. Being somebody of two different races, Asian from Pakistan and or well, technically India, because my dad was born in India before the partition, and then from the Philippines. Your kids also have that, from your marriage. But one thing I will tell you, I think it's a great, great service that you do to your kids when you take them back to their cultural roots. Um, One of the challenges I had, at least in my lifetime, is how do you find that identity? Because you are from multiple cultures and you love all the cultures. You just, don't anchor on one. But coming back to the family piece of it, uh, I think you bring a certain dynamic to the entrepreneurial space that I don't see often myself. So I just want to pick on that just a little bit. How do you find the time and energy with coaching, with entrepreneurship, with the work that you do, in the different circles that you're a part of? How do you find that efficiency? Share with us some of your time management tools or tricks or something like that, because I know it's a lot that you do just from, the personal interactions we've had.
That's a great question, Amir. And once I figure out, I'll let you know.
So we're gonna stay in suspense until then.
It is difficult. It is one of those things that you just have to prioritize the right thing the right week. It changes week to week. So when we are launching, for example, new investments, like majority of my focus goes towards real estate. And then I try to pull back a little bit, take a little break, and then focus on, the coaching aspect of things and kind of putting curriculum together for the folks who may want to join a cohort that I'm offering. Um, and then of course, and like you mentioned, like I do consulting on side as well. So I'm working actually directly with the CIO right now, just helping her kind of through the the difficulties that is kind of stuck, with inheriting a company that's older technology wise. So it is balancing definitely, but I would say, one of my favorite things to do for every morning, and I share this with every single every single person I coach, is every morning have your 2 or 3 most important priorities for the day. And they could be like responding to somebody's email. It could be I need to put together this quick strategy so I can send it off. I need to think about this, change or a setup of meeting or a process that would help the CIO. So whatever that is for like that day, just 2 or 3, because we get lost very quickly in everything that comes at us. And it comes at us very quickly. And especially if you have younger kids, they're coming in your room like before you're even awake, right in your bed. So like your priorities are shifted very quickly. So just having that like helps me. Um, but it also stresses me out end of the day if I'm not done with those 2 or 3 things end of the day. But it kind of sets a tone for the day as well.
Would you call yourself a 5 a.m.er? That's the
Five
secret right
between
there.
5 and 6, depending on the time change. So I was in Salt Lake City last week for a conference, and that's why we had to move it to this week. And I was up at, 5 a.m. there, which ended up being 6 here. So then like I was lazy for about a week.
That's the secret right there, Divya. I think we're all, 4 a.m.ers or 5, well, I know Renard's a 4 a.m.er. He's up even earlier than I am, but I'm definitely a 5 a.m.er.
Yes. Yes. I think it helps. I like the quiet too. I think older I get, the more I prefer to be in a quiet, focused space than being in large meetings all day long.
Well, Divya, I wanna pivot a little bit because, um, we talk about AI on this show from time to time, and I know you've got a perspective on that as well. Uh, how would you talk about AI today? How does it help you in your work?
I think AI is very helpful if you know how it can help you and you can kind of go out and utilize it the way you need it. Of course, it's not at that critical mass where you give it an idea and it does everything for you. Yes, it can give me this, beautiful plan that I know a lot of people are talking about, and I'm going to pick at, some of the big consulting companies. You can now like put it in there and it can give you that strategy that we pay thousands and thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars for. Um, End of the day, we still got to do the work, right? Somebody still has to go in there and kind of put together things. I know AI can, do development, do code, but it's still not doing that end to end touch point of how does the customer feel when they go through this, right? What is that end to end customer experience, end to end value of the work? So, right, like all of that is still kind of remaining. Of course, I found bits and pieces of what I do use for AI. So, I have some automation around some social network, and I have some AI around some marketing materials and some things around some one pagers and documents, but I still have to review it. It confuses from last investment to this investment what I'm doing. It confuses with, like today I said, hey, here's a quick return. Give me AAR value for it, which is average annual return. It gave me IRR, which is internal rate of return. And I was like, no, I meant those are 2 different numbers, right? And I have to like explain it. And then it's like, oh, I understand what you're saying. These are two. It just thought I, typed it wrong. So instead of saying IRR, it assumed that I had done a mistake and wrote ARR. So it's little things like that. That end of the day, we still have to verify. It can help, but there's a lot of verification needed. It doesn't have as many synapses and connections that are in our brain. Like it can't really replace a human brain.
That's great. Um, any specific call outs on tools or no?
Gosh, I use so many. It would be kind of like I would need to get paid by these brands if I start taking that.
That's fair. I was teasing you with that question, and I just wanted to see if you'd take a bite, but you
Yeah.
didn't.
I just some are good in some ways or another. And I know Renard and I had just talked about one tool that may be better than the other. But once you kind of get set up on one and it knows you and and you start telling it, hey, like, stop being so nice to me, give me straight up. So every single time I get a response, it tells me, here's a no BS response to the question you asked. Like, this is perfect. So it takes time to kind of teach your model, right? So you got to pick it. Like with that, I will share this. So at Target Corporation, when I worked there, and this is almost 2015. So, oh my gosh, so that's like 10, 11 years. At that time, we were using machine learning tools. I was using gradient boosting models to predict some of our future orders and forecasting and some of those numbers. And of course, we didn't call it AI. Today, we call that AI, but that was a machine learning product. We used it. So, AI and machine learning and all of this kind of has been in play for a while. We just haven't really set the word AI and I know a lot of us now have started to differentiate the LLMs. Yes, like now I can speak a language and it understands, but like some of that behind the scenes, especially some of us nerds, we kind of knew how to talk to it. We just talked differently instead of just plain English. So it's been around for a while. End of the day, you still got to know how to use it. And like, what is the use case? I can't just, plop a AI on top of basic data set and not know what it's going to do, right? So we got to be very clear about the use cases we are using it for.
Yeah.
Great
You
question.
know, I I'm reminded about tokens. So, do you remember in machine learning, we didn't call them tokens, but basically, if you compare from a token lens, there's a lot less tokens in machine learning than you would in an LLM.
Yes,
So
yes,
from a
exactly.
cost perspective, if you go straight to LLM and your use case doesn't need an LLM, you're actually wasting money.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it any better, Amir. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah. But I know Renard has been, well, he's got a different perspective because of manufacturing, right?
Yeah. And just going back when we were talking about just AI and transferring. I'm in the same boat. I use multiple, and now I'm trying to consolidate now because you get so used to using a couple of them for certain things. But I always think right now where we are, as far as AI is concerned, it is a thought partner. It's a great thought partner. I always say trust but verify with anything, including AI, because I've even sat there and had conversations say, I need you to verify everything you just put on there. Like, where did you get it from? Is that true, or are you just giving estimates, etcetera? And it'll go through it, and then I will still go verify somewhere else just to make sure. Because if I gotta present anything in front of anybody, I'm all about trust but verify in the same thing. But I would love to go back to that entrepreneur area, especially when it comes to real estate. I know that you have, similar people investing as well. You could have just said, "Hey, I'm going to just invest me and our family," but now you're getting other people who are in the corporate space as well to invest as well. What made you want to span out to that particular piece?
That is a great question, Renard. So you hit it kind of right on the head. When I started, it was just me, and I just wanted to test it out and kind of learn about it. And then I really started seeing the results of it. And one of the things, and this is kind of just like so close to my heart, is when we're in technology, we are so focused on our systems and stability and having it up 99.999. You know how many nines you want to add, like always on, right? We'd never say 100% because, we're technologists. We know AWS does go down. We know Microsoft does go down. So, um, but these people, they're sometimes you're working 20 hours a day. Sometimes, you're truly up all night. So my heart was really kind of around like, when do you really go out and like research for yourself? Like, how do you ever get out of the rat race? Let's say you did want to take a break. And like I mentioned earlier, like some of us love technology so much that we probably would never walk away from it, but maybe we just want to reduce our hours. Well, how do you get those options if you don't have time? So that's where I decided, you know what, I'm going to go out, start to research my own some of these investment options. And if it looks good, I will start sharing it with people and they can, review it, do their own due diligence. But instead of so many out there, so there's quite a few out there, instead of so many out there, like now they only have like smaller quantity that they have to look at. And now they can decide if that makes sense for them. Because I've done some work ahead of time to see if that makes sense for them and share pros and cons of, some of these opportunities. So that was my thought kind of going into and sharing. And I think one of the ones, even Renard, that I shared with you is this technology investment, right? I come across many startups, and this investment, by the way, it's closed. So don't worry about, kind of reaching out to me regarding that. But it was this startup. It looked incredibly amazing. And, because I'd built relationships with some of these people, um, 2 years ago, and we brought this opportunity to our investors, and I was just going to invest. And once we reviewed it, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to share this with more people. So that's where I decided to kind of take it forward, and it was so successful. A lot of people ask me, like, how did you even get, hands on this? Well, because I've been building relationships. So I want other people to leverage the relationships I've built so that it's not just me benefiting it's more people benefiting from that. Because our community is tight and it's small. End of the day, I see still similar people in our circle. I've gone full circle in 5 to 10 years to have same people ask me if I would join another company, right? So that does happen, and if this community is small, the trusted people who truly deliver work, that group of people is small.
Yeah. And saying my part, when you introduced me to that side of your business, and I looked at I actually already told her, I said, like, me and my wife are probably gonna start getting involved in that, because I was all we always talked about, like, how can we diversify? How can we start making some passive income around here instead of us just working until somebody passes out around here? And and you hit it on the head, building relationships and connection. We connected, and all of a sudden now you said, hey, this is what I'm doing on this side. So I like that power of connection and building those relationships. You hit that key on the head. I want to dive a little bit even more into that. And I always ask this, especially so our listeners understand, if you're just starting off in your career, why building relationships in general, if it's professional or if it's just, entrepreneurship, why is that so important?
So critical. And I'm going to give an example, even just from corporate, right? Because most of the listeners, I'm assuming, are from corporate background. So just even to give that, I was starting to look for new roles right after, I had decided, hey, I've been at Target for about 9 years, like I'm looking for a change. I had interviewed at multiple different companies, and I decided not to go with this one company. And all the leaders, I had connected with them. This is about 11 years ago. I have stayed in touch with that person, that leader, because we connected on such a deeper level and analytical mindset, but also life philosophy and many of the other things. Over the year, that leader he's become a good friend. He is now an investor. We are hoping to get our families together at some point in time, but it started with just continuing to build that relationship. It wasn't a transactional interview. It's like we took time to get to know each other, and now we've continued to stay in touch for time. And similar thing goes, in any of the relationships you build. So like this investment, the technology investment, if somebody had known for 2.5 years, I had stayed in touch with her every few months. We'll get on a phone call, 5 to 10 minutes. It doesn't take that much effort or time, but it truly is. End of the day, we are humans who seek, positive connections. And if you have those connections, right, like they can really pay off in future. So really taking time to build those connections. Now, I'm not saying, every single person, go send them messages and phone calls, like don't do that. But if you truly connect with somebody, take time to kind of learn and get to know them, because you never know when an opportunity arises either for you to work with them or be able to learn something from each other as well.
100% correct. 100%, 100%. I gotta say, because I literally posted about that, told somebody else about that, and it's not that difficult to do. I think that's what some people think. It's this big ordeal. I'm like, it's if you really wanna get to know somebody, you will put the effort into it. It's not that much you have to do. You don't have to change your entire schedule just to get to know somebody. It should just be natural, and like you said, you built those over time, and now they don't feel like just this side relationship. These are people you get to know. You get to say, "Hey, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, how your kids doing," etc. That's the relationships I think people should focus on and build over time. Amir, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of us, we get caught up that every relationship is like a transaction. And I think that's a big mistake, because at the end of that, in the end of that conversation, there's a human being that, is impacted with the words you use. So if you come in with a sales pitch first and not come as a human being, then that's what you're going to get. You're just going to get either a ignore or, something you may not want. But I think both of you are touching on something that is such an important part of any person in corporate, not even corporate, just in general. How do you connect with human beings? And that comes down to communication. And I'm thinking about myself, my younger self. I probably was not so good with communication, So, Divya, when you meet some of these coaching clients of yours, how is their communication skill?
Um, I think we communicate really well professionally. I think it's the mixing of what we want, desire with what we think the other person wants to hear. I think bridging those two, that's the hardest. So, and that's kind of where even so I'm actually reviewing with a coaching client like a couple of the job offers he has, and one of them he likes but he doesn't like the numbers on it. He likes the company but not actually what they're offering him. And the hardest thing he had is how does he put the f- that into words? And I was helping him, kind of how do you communicate and kind of put that into words with your ask and need, and truly just make more of a human kind of conversation versus just this transactional thing. Hey, I'm looking for this money, but you didn't offer me. It's not about that. It's like it's I'm excited, share the emotion, but then also share like how did you get to that decision? And I think sometimes you forget that part of it. So the effective communication, and I know this is such a cliche because we all went through that corporate training. I mean, that was what, like all the 2000s, like it was all about it. You're all laughing. You get exactly what I'm saying. That was like what, 10 years in corporate America, all of 2000s, early 2010s. Like, oh yeah, there we go. HR is here again with like communication training. You don't learn to communicate through a class, right? You're practicing it day in, day out. But the hardest part is being very clear and authentic about what I want with truly communicating like how it may come off to another person and acknowledging the other perspective, but then also sharing yours. And I feel as humans, sometimes we take on other people's reactions as our own. And that's not like fair to either side because, in if it is an honest, authentic relationship, they want to hear your side. So kind of sharing your perspective, but then acknowledging another person's perspective. I think that's critical. But couldn't agree more. I think the communication, especially in technology community, is really, really difficult. And I'm like liable for that. Do we think in terms of code? I was like, A goes to B goes to C, right? Like how, like it's very, very methodical. It's very logical. Communication doesn't work that way. We all have feelings too, which complicates.
I've worked with a few engineers who were software engineers, and they would tell me I'd rather speak to a computer.
Yeah, I've managed many of those people. They've been on my teams, and we've figured out a way to communicate. And it takes time, and you have to help them and give them words because sometimes they just don't learn the words as well. And I think, Amir, I'm going to share this with you, and I think you may get it. Renard, you may be way better off just because of like I think there's an upbringing kind of difference as well. In some cultures, we are taught to speak about our emotions. In others, you just eat them and you don't talk about them, right? Like so, it's um, there's that as well. So even with my kids, we have to name emotions, which is even hard for me. So honestly, I have a list of like emotions, like different emotions that help me sometimes. How do I like put a label or a word that is helpful for them? So even culturally, sometimes, especially, people who have not grown up in US, like you're not taught, like you're following what your parents said, you're following what your teachers told you. So you're not used to expressing your feelings and concerns.
Yeah, I mean, being 2 kinds of Asian, I'll tell you it's a very common theme in Asia.
You got it doubly hard.
Nobody's ever said that to me, but now that you've said it, I'm gonna agree with you there. Yeah, it's, you bring again another good point, Divya, is that communication is very cultural as well, so what we are taught and brought up with makes an impact on us as adults. What are we comfortable saying and not saying? And you and I know this, our South Asian culture demands a certain level of respect and bowing towards authority that the American culture doesn't really have or rather tolerates. So what do you do if you come from that culture? You're coming for grad school or undergrad, or you're a teenager coming to America. That's a big pivot, you
It
know?
really is. It really is. College, I had started, and one of my professors just said, "Don't call me professor, just say my name." And I was like, "I can't do it."
I know
Like
that
4 years
feeling.
to get to a point to say his first name, like almost at graduation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I grew up calling sir and madam, like that was expected.
Mhm. I think now in Texas,
Right.
like I say yes, ma'am all the time, and like nobody gets phased, thankfully. So that works out.
Yeah. It works out in Texas for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I grew up saying "Sir" and "ma'am." I came from a military family, so it was automatic for me. Like, and I come from the South, living in New Orleans. You automatically said "Sir" and "ma'am," and so I had to learn to stop saying it. I had to recently learn to stop saying it, and it was very difficult for me to stop saying that and just call people by their first name. Even if we were great friends and knew you for years, I would still say "Sir," "ma'am." To even my friends. So I had to learn to stop that. But you go back and you talk about different cultures and all that. In my culture for the most part, our emotions, we were pretty much told you need to be tough all the time, keep it in, don't really express it that much. And I told Amir and I've told other people that was probably some of the worst advice I ever got in my life. Just growing up and not expressing how you truly feel, you carry a lot because of that. So, at older I got, I understood that you need to do that and made sure I taught my son it's okay for you to say, "Hey, you got a problem with something," or "you're sad," and all that. That doesn't mean that you're not who you are, that's part of you, so I had to learn that as well, so different cultures definitely, all the same in the sense of, you "Sir, ma'am," and keep how you feel to yourself for the most part and be tough, so it did change over time for me. I really wanted one of the final questions, like we go back to AI, you hit on one perspective working with a client and trying to change that business and make it more modern. What are those steps that you're going through, if you can elaborate on that to try to get them to transition into where we're going now, into AI, into a modern company?
And some of this is going to come off as cliche because I think we all have done it. So I'll share some, and I'd love kind of even opinions and kind of thoughts from what you both have done in technology as well. Is end of the day, transformation is just doing something the way you're doing to something better or more effective process. I think the word transformation has been used kind of very generically, but it is a generic word. The focus that I have currently is really solidifying kind of end to end picture of how the current production systems are working and how they can even continue to be better than what they are today. And some of these were built in 80s and 90s. Yes, believe it or not. So I'm looking at AS400 sort of systems and kind of just helping them kind of think about how to do it differently. And in that process, you realize there's some very basic kind of understanding of being proactive. There's and then there's reactive, right? But you're gonna start with reactive first, like, okay, I know something went wrong. Let me share that with you. Okay, now that I have gotten better at letting you know when I expect certain things and they're delayed, now I'm anticipating. So it's starting to go from the reactive to proactive. So that's kind of the scale that I'm helping them think through. Now that we understand where issues can happen and what's expected, let's be proactive in identifying at which point of time a failure can happen. And if it doesn't happen, I'm proactively communicating that there's a delay. So that's one aspect of it. Another one that I actually ended up doing was with Cigna Healthcare. I had worked with them directly to help open up their GCC in Hyderabad. So they didn't have a presence in India. So that was last year. And I had just come in as a part time consultant because I was still doing real estate full time. So this is 10 hours a week, kind of working with all of their HR leaders and technology leaders to identify what are the most critical teams to set up and which ones would be successful, because you can't just move a team from US to India, and like especially as there's fewer number of people in US that are getting hired for that specific role, or they can't find the roles, whatever the reason is. So that team is small here and they want to kind of continue to build it in India. So as we set that up, or even switch some of their contractors over from contractor status to full-time employee status, as we went through that, it was a kind of conversation strategically which role to make sense, where the business would be successful, but then also working with HR, what levels make sense. Now that as we're going to hire it, what do those levels look like? How do we kind of compensate them? What strategically makes sense in building the size of the team? How many leaders do you need for a size of a team? 30 to a 50. So we kind of worked through all of that strategy from um, team size, evaluation, strategic, future thinking. Then we also started thinking about the functions and technologies that make sense over there. So I gave a lot of detail for that because I wanted to make sure, people were able to kind of picture some of those. But end of the day, it comes down to really understanding like where you want to be. The hardest part is, I think, as leadership, a lot of the times we know where we want to be. We don't know the steps to get there. So for me, I love kind of figuring out how to get there in a step by step format. And that's where I've kind of done most of my consulting.
Mm. I love that. I love that. I have to say this, Divya, you do so much. Of course, you are, what they usually call the jack of all trades, or any moniker. And a lot of times on our podcast, every so often, we have somebody who is very exceptional of doing so much. We have some great guests, but every so often, we have to give someone a black belt on our podcast. And Divya, I have to say, of the things that you do, the inspiration, and you're changing so many lives, I will have to say that you're a black belt in your industry.
Thank you. I feel honored. Thank you. Yes, I was gonna just share. I have officially done taekwondo in my time, and I've only
Okay.
reached red belt. So this is definitely a promotion.
Hey, that's close. I took taekwondo. I had to stop at red belt as well, but you definitely deserve that. After just being able to have conversations with you myself, I know Amir has as well, and just seeing all the great things that you do. You're definitely a black belt in your industry, and you definitely have earned that from me and Amir. Definitely.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I know we're getting close to time. And for everyone, we always ask, what's your theme music? What's that music that gets you ready for the day? If it's going to the gym, we have to ask, what is your theme?
So it's a song called Legends Never Die, and it's actually my kids introduced it to me about a few years ago. It's actually part of this superhero movie, but it just reminds me there are people who have been legendary, in our industry. And in my mind, they truly don't die. The ideals that they have, the values that they have, like it continues to go on. So it kind of reminds me to be like following them. So that's kind of what gets me going.
I like that. I like that. I'm gonna have to look that song up. I think you told me about it off the air, so I'm gonna have to look it up, and listen to that song. So I think that's a good song. That is the way to end the podcast. We definitely have to say we thank you for taking the time. I will say, like I've said on many times, this is a master class that you have given us for us to understand of so many things of how to really find ways of having passive income, and also just overall just saying, hey, I want to spend more time with the family. What can I do? And I think you have set a blueprint for that. So we thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking with us. And I have to say to our black belts and boardrooms audience, we will see you on the next one.
Thank you for having me.